Hi, my name is Adam Whitmer. I'm the founder and host here at ComplianceCohort.com. This compliance clip is going to discuss what an error is under the Electronic Funds Transfer Act and Regulation E. So our question here is, what is an error for purposes of the Electronic Funds Transfers Act and Regulation E? Now, what we're talking about here are disputes. When you have a customer who has a dispute on their account from maybe their debit card, they say they didn't do this transaction. They'll come into you and they say, I didn't do this, and what you have to do is you have to investigate that dispute. Now, there are Visa MasterCard rules that are completely separate of what we're about to talk about, because there are also separate rules under Regulation E in the Electronic Funds Transfers Act. So what we're discussing are errors, because an error, by definition, are covered under the Electronic Funds Transfers Act, and there are specific requirements in 1005.11 that require you to investigate an error when you receive one. So that's what we're talking about here, is errors for purposes of the Electronic Funds Transfer Act and for Regulation E and for dispute purposes. Now, of course, the answer to this is going to come in 1005.11 of Regulation E, but it's also going to come from a couple of other places. We're going to look at the definition section of Regulation E. We're going to talk about the liability section, and we will also discuss the frequently asked question, number one, under the CFPB's frequently asked questions for electronic funds transfers, under frequently asked question number one under the category of error resolution. So quite a bit of information we're going to cover here. Now, an error under the Electronic Funds Transfers Act and Regulation E includes a number of things. First and foremost, it includes an unauthorized electronic funds transfer. Now, this is what we think of most often when we think of an error. And when we think of having to conduct an investigation and do research for the customer and go through our error resolution process and our investigation process. But it's important to understand that an unauthorized EFT is not the only thing. Now, unauthorized EFTs have liability requirements where the customer can be held liable based on certain things under 1005.6 of Regulation E. However, we're really talking about the error resolution and error investigation processes under 1005.11 of Regulation E. So we'll talk about an unauthorized EFT in a little bit, but what we're talking about is what is included in an error. So first and foremost, it is an unauthorized EFT. Secondly, it's an incorrect EFT to or from the consumer's account. It also includes the omission from a periodic statement of an EFT to or from the consumer's account that should have been included. It also includes a computational or bookkeeping error made by the financial institution relating to an electronic funds transfer. It also includes the consumer's receipt of an incorrect amount of money from an electronic terminal. It also includes an EFT not identified in accordance with the requirements of 1005.9, which are the receipts at electronic terminals and periodic statements, or 1005.10a, which relates to pre-authorized transfers to consumers' accounts. And it also includes a consumer's request for any documentation required by 1005.9 or 1005.10a, or for additional information or clarification concerning an electronic funds transfer. So all of these things are included as an error under Regulation E 1005.11, meaning that when you get any one of these things, you have to conduct an investigation in accordance with 1005.11. That is what an error is. Now let's define an unauthorized EFT, because it's hard to talk about an error without discussing what an unauthorized EFT is. So an unauthorized electronic funds transfer means an electronic funds transfer from a consumer's account initiated by a person other than the consumer without actual authority to initiate the transfer and from which the consumer receives no benefit. So the consumer receives no benefit, and it's done by somebody they did not authorize to initiate the transfer. Now, the term does not include a number of things. For example, it does not include an electronic funds transfer initiated by a person who has furnished the access device to the consumer's account by the actual consumer, unless the consumer had notified the financial institution the transfers by that person are no longer authorized, in which that case you would have canceled the card and given them reissued a new card if you reissued one at all. It also does not include electronic funds transfer initiated with fraudulent intent by the consumer or any person acting in concert with the consumer, and also does not include electronic funds transfer initiated by the financial institution or its employee. Now, the commentary clarifies a number of things, and there's just a couple of things I want to point out. First and foremost, when they talk about a transfer by an institution's employee, what they say is the consumer has no liability for erroneous or fraudulent transfers initiated by an employee of a financial institution. So while other unauthorized EFTs have potential consumer liability, an unauthorized EFT by an employee of a financial institution has zero liability. That's what they're talking about there. Also, they say an unauthorized EFT includes a transfer initiated by a person who obtained the access device from the consumer through fraud or robbery. Also, they talk about forced initiation. They say an EFT at an ATM is an unauthorized transfer if the consumer has been induced by force to initiate that transfer. So that is an unauthorized EFT. Now, going back to an error. Now, there are a couple of things that are excluded by the Regulation E, in the definition of an error. So an error does not include a number of things. It does not include a routine inquiry about the consumer's account balance. It does not include a request for information for tax or other record-keeping purposes, and it does not include a request for duplicate copies of documentation. So that is an error. Now, this is just a compliance clip. We're not taking a deep dive into Regulation E, which I hope to have a class at some point that does that. I've taught on Regulation E previously, but this is really just one little piece of the larger Regulation E process. So hopefully this was beneficial. This is talking about an error under Regulation E. And that's all I have for you for this compliance clip. Now, if you're brand new to the compliance cohort, I encourage you to consider becoming a free member. We have a basic membership that's absolutely free. Just go to compliancecohort.com and sign up for a free membership where we have a bunch of free training videos just like this. We also have a bunch of articles and resources, a Friday newsletter, and a bunch of other things where we try to help compliance professionals in doing their jobs. If you're an existing member, we appreciate you. You're the reason we do what we do. And until next time, I hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you so much.